Ah, the countryside. Open fields, easy on the eye, fresh air, birdsong. And big, hungry farming machines. Ladies and gentlemen, let's reap!
Over the past 300 years, farming has been transformed by massive machines, doing in a day what once took hundreds of labourers weeks of back-breaking work.
So, how did farming become so high-tech and high-powered? Come on, back to work. Time is money. The challenge facing farmers has always been the same: to produce as much food as possible with a minimum outlay of time, labour and expense. But for centuries, it really was a lot of hard work.
First, you had to plough your field to get rid of all the weeds and aerate the soil. Then you sowed your seed. There was time for a breather while the stuff grew, but before you knew it, back to work. Finally, the worst job of the lot was thrashing the living daylights out of the stuff to extract those all-important grains.
I'm knackered. It was all just too much effort. What farming needed was something with a bit of horsepower. Enter Captain. 4 beefy legs, 17 hands high, and 1 horsepower. But hitched to a heavy metal plough, like this, 3 of him could get through a whole acre in 1 day. So, how do they work? Right, well, first of all, a bit of fuel. There you go. There you are, Captain. Good boy. And then, of course, clutch, gears, steering and brakes. Well, there we are. Reins and harness. And we're ready for ignition. There we go, down on the left. Pretty damn aching work, that's for sure. Wouldn't like to do this from 8 till 8 of a day, I tell you.
This was the way farming was done for thousands of years.
It's actually
Captain and his friends may have sped up ploughing, but it was no free ride for the farmer.
Right, okay.
I would have to walk 10 miles a day just to plough 1 acre.
Well, I'm sort of ploughing here now. Yes, that's good, that's good. Dig, dig, dig. Well done, Captain.
For horsepower to really make a difference to the farmer's lot, it needed a revolution. And this was the man that led it. Jethro Tull was a gentleman farmer disillusioned with his slow workforce and eager to modernise farming. Jethro's agricultural revolution began in an Oxfordshire church in 1701.
Excuse me?
Pilfering the parts of the organ, he built the world's first farming machine. With his revolutionary seed drill, he won his place in history as the father of modern farming.
And here we have a seed drill. This is a 1940s model, but it's a direct descendant of Jethro Tull's original and works on the same principle. It's pulled by horse and it deposits 11 rows of seed, dramatically improving crop yield. It's also faster and more precise. What happens is the seed goes in here, it's picked up by these rotating cups driven by the wheels. It's sent into this spout here and then drops down into the ground, into a furrow created by this disc. Less work, more crop. Good news.
Tull's seed drill spawned a whole host of horse-powered labour-saving devices, like this horse engine. Using a horse's power to drive a shaft, wheels and numerous belts, it took the strain out of grinding and crushing grain.
Simple, low-tech, fabulous.
Thanks to Captain and Jethro Tull, farming really began to rock and roll. But horsepower did have its drawbacks, regular rest periods and lots of labour-intensive care. Farming was ready for some serious heavy metal.
12 tons of it in this case. Add to that about 100 gallons of water and a few shovelfuls of coal. And what do you got? A steam traction engine. Farmers started to use these in the mid-1800s, and this thundering beauty is a 1901 Fowler steam traction engine. Right, let's see what we've got. Well, we've got a compound steam engine which uses the same steam twice. First of all in the smaller high-pressure cylinder, and then in the larger low-pressure cylinder. Via this connecting rod, it turns the crankshaft here, and then via a system of gears and shafts, it drives these rather gorgeous wheels. It's a 4-shaft engine, so it's got 4 shafts, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one is the axle. Steering is by worm and gear, which turns this cotton reel type affair, which pulls a chain in either direction depending on which way you're going. And over here we've got this, probably one of the most beautiful flywheels you'll ever see, which of course maintains the momentum of the engine. Right, so we're on the footplate. Ladies and gentlemen, let's trundle. It's actually trickier than it looks to steer. It's got about 30 turns from lock to lock and no pneumatic tyres. So Porsche 911, it ain't. You really don't want to get in the way of this machine, believe me.
So traction engines were heavy, slow, and a nightmare to maneuver, but they made a great mobile power source for driving a new breed of massive farm machines. They were used most in the threshing process, separating the wheat from the chaff. By hand, this took 100 man-hours to yield just 1 ton of grain.
But by hooking up the power of this magnificent steam engine via this flywheel and canvas belt, you could chase the threshing blues away. Using this magnificent threshing machine, you can produce over 1 ton of grain per hour. So the sheaves are put on this conveyor belt, they're taken down to a revolving drum which beats the grain. That, of course, used to be done manually with one of these before this machine came along. At this stage, about 2/3 of the grain is separated, and that goes to the bottom of the machine, ready for the next process. So those longer pieces of redundant hay come out the top here and pile up here, ready for their next career as bedding for the horses. Meanwhile, the shorter bits of hay and the wheat heads have more grain shaken out of them on this riddle. The grain is then cleaned, the dust is blown off it, and finally it arrives here at the grader. And here you have the fine grain coming out through these two here, that's sort of chicken feed. Then your best quality stuff is at this end, coming out of these two. What a machine!
For farm workers once employed full-time but now paid by the day, machines like this were saving a little too much labour. 2 months a year, in fact. Unrest was rife, and crimes against technology made headline news.
Protesters in the swing counties of southern England calling for an end to farm mechanisation destroyed another threshing machine. Fearful farmers are now leaving them outside at night so farm buildings at least can be spared. Not even death sentences and transportation are discouraging the angry ex-farm workers. Truly, the peasants were revolting.
Much to the annoyance of manual labourers, steam engines continued to power an increasing amount of automation. But their weight meant that they spent most of their working time at the edge of the field, not in the heart of it. A major drawback. What farmers needed now was a serious off-roader.
Let's motor! With the invention of the tractor, life on the farm would never be the same again.
Tractors first appeared in the 1890s, but a massive push for domestic food production at the end of the Second World War kicked off their widespread usage. Thanks to internal combustion engines, which were much smaller and lighter than steam engines, tractors took farming machines out into the heart of the fields, along with a whole lot more horsepower.
29 in the case of this Ferguson TE20. That's 4 times the power of our Fowler steam traction engine.
With a tractor, for the first time in history, a farmer was able to carry out a huge variety of major tasks cheaply and quickly on his own, without the help of costly labor. A dream come true.
The Ferguson is so maneuverable that you can farm every bit of the ground, every foot of every acre.
Affectionately known as the Grey Fergie, the Ferguson TE20 was the most produced tractor ever, and many are still working in farms up and down the land.
Well, this simple machine has grown on me since I've been operating it. 500,000 were built between 1946 and 1956. The first ones ran on lamp oil, and then you had a choice between petrol paraffin or diesel. It's a rugged machine that no farmer could afford to be without. But the versatility brought to farming by tractors like this has been improved upon 100-fold today by tractors like this. The Massey Ferguson 8480. Of course, she looks a whole lot bigger, but the key engineering elements established by the TE20 remain the same. So, what are they? First and foremost, horsepower. Under the bonnets of modern tractors, you'll find turbo diesel engines capable of developing up to 500 horsepower.
It's a massive amount of power for a new breed of massive tractor that can handle the sheer size of modern farms. But all that power is useless without grip, and that's where those big tires come in. They spread the weight of the tractor, preventing it from sinking into the mud and making easy work of rough ground.
Now this is what I call a proper 4x4. Wee-ah!
The better grip and traction of pneumatic tires also improves fuel efficiency, meaning less cost and more profit.
They also allow agricultural vehicles to use the roads more easily to get from field to field. And hold up, you lot.
I'm going to be a meeting in 5 minutes, for God's sake!
He'll just have to wait. What that tiresome man back there doesn't realize is that I've got 5 times more horsepower than he has. But it's not there for speed. It's there to pull massive loads.
But sheer pulling power on its own is not enough. Where tractors start to get really clever is back here. This is the 3-point linkage found on all tractors, and it was designed in the 1930s by a British pioneer in tractor design.
Harry Ferguson was the son of a farmer and a brilliant engineer. He also brought us the Grey Fergie, on which the 3-point linkage made one of its first appearances.
His name graces the side of this very machine. Without his 3-point linkage, when an implement was attached to the back of a tractor, the weight of that implement forced the tow bar down and into the ground, upending the tractor in the process. Unfortunately, several farmers were killed by this fundamental problem of weight distribution.
As this early publicity material shows, the 3-point linkage redirected the forces which had been upending the tractor right through to the front wheels, keeping them on the ground. At the same time, rear wheel traction was also improved. The end result? Tractor and implement working in perfect harmony.
Technicalities aside, it's made the tractor into an amazingly flexible farmyard machine because any implement of any size or weight can be attached to it, enabling the tractor to carry out a huge range of tasks.
This is the fun way to plough.
Remember those 3 horses ploughing an acre a day? Well, your modern tractor can typically get through between 40 to 80 times that, with the Massey Ferguson 8280, the older brother of this very model, being the world ploughing record holder with a massive 1,500 acres in 24 hours.
Whether it's a plough for perfectly formed furrows, a disc harrow to break up the soil more lightly, or a baler to clear up after the harvest, the tractor can pull just about anything. And that's not all it can do.
Via this power takeoff shaft here and these hydraulics, the tractor can power and finally control implements too.
Thanks to its power, traction and 3-point linkage, the implements a tractor can pull have got bigger and bigger, enabling them to do much more work in much less time. So, is there any limit to how much a tractor can pull?
This is the amazing sport of tractor pulling. And put simply, it's the ultimate test of a tractor's pulling power!
It started out as some friendly rivalry between a few farmers with their ordinary tractors. But at events like this, an agricultural show near Preston, it's now taken very seriously indeed. The idea is to see how much weight the tractor can pull or drag over 100 metres, and we're talking about some serious loads.
Now this box weighs 5 tons, and you can put anything up to 8 tons inside it. This, coupled with the sledge itself, means that when the tractor sets off, it's pulling a rolling load of about 28 tons.
As the tractor powers along the track, the box moves forward and massively increases the amount of drag on the ground. So much so that by the end of the run, the tractor can be pulling the equivalent of 100 tons. Of course, these are no ordinary tractors. This machine is called Desperate Dan. Just look at this engine. Well, actually it's 4 engines developing 1,600 horsepower each. That's more than a Formula 1 car and, astonishingly, a total of 6,400 horsepower. This is what it feels like on board. The tractor has become an extraordinarily powerful and versatile workhorse. But even the most massive tractor doesn't quite earn the title of the world's ultimate farming machine.
But this does.
The Combine Harvester. Carrying out on its own more work than any other single farming machine by reaping and threshing, this is the undisputed king of farm machines. It's a factory on wheels.
And there's 512 horsepower bursting into life. We love it. That's the noise that tells me the factory is now working behind me. And then that one there, which should get my cutter bar going, and we're away.
It's so productive that they've stopped measuring what it can do per day. This beast can eat its way through 18 acres per hour, or a ton of grain every couple of minutes, pushing the boundaries of agricultural production beyond all previous limits to feed a global market.
And this is my throttle here, no feet involved, and I'm just going to swing it around here and get myself in line. It's got rear wheel steer, so it's quite sensitive. Here we go. Just going to back off the speed a little bit. No chance of getting stuck with the tracks on this vehicle. Absolutely brilliant. Manual steering at the moment, but now I'm engaging auto. And now I've got automatic steer. My lasers are engaged. Basically, the laser follows the line of crop, and I don't need to do anything in terms of steering because the laser's doing it all for me.
Combines were invented for large-scale farming in the vast American prairies during the 1800s, when they were pulled by up to 40 horses. They cut the crop, separate the grain from the straw, and even clean it.
It all starts here with this 30-foot wide cutter bar. First of all, the rotational movement of the red reel lays the crop over, ready for cutting, which is carried out by these rather lethal-looking reciprocating blades. The spiraling movement of the green auger then brings the product into the center of the table, and those silver fingers drag it back onto the elevator, which takes it up into the middle of the machine, ready for threshing. My cutters go down, and then forward we go. You need to watch my speed. An ideal speed is about between 4.5 and 5 kilometers. Any slower than that, and it's just not good for the machine or the crop.
So that's the cutting, or reaping. Next, the main task of threshing to separate out the grain begins.
So here we have a series of revolving drums, just like in the steam thresher of old. The material comes in here, it's accelerated by this drum, and this drum here is the one which does the main beating. So by the time we get to this stage, 90% of the grain is separated.
The next stage of separation takes place in 2 revolving cylinders mounted lengthwise inside the combine, which spin at up to 1,000 revolutions per minute. Again, like the old steam thresher, the separated grain is cleaned and filtered via a series of sieve trays before heading back upstairs,
where it's expelled into this storage tank. Now this can hold up to 8.5 tons before it needs emptying. While we're up here, let's take a look at that engine. 512 horsepower, twin turbo diesel, V8, a real monster. But of course it has to be, because not only does it have a lot of work to do, it's got to cart around the 30 tons of combine in the first place.
In the meantime, all the rubbish and chaff separated out is either expelled as straw or used as cuttings to prepare the soil for next year. Again, just like the steam thresher, but turbo-powered.
Well, I've done some harvesting, but now it's time for the difficult bit, unloading. So basically you're cutting and unloading at the same time. Okay, I'm going to see me bar come out and hold it out in front of me. There we go. Just going to slow down a bit so the tractor can catch up with me. There we go. And it's his responsibility to actually keep a steady pace. Slightly worried about what we do when we get to the end. There we go, we're all loading quite nice.
Well, my aim always was good, and just as well. I've just dumped 8.5 tons in less than 2 minutes. Fantastic. Farming has become a global, mechanized industry which never stops. Unlike their horse and steam-powered predecessors, massive modern farm machines are designed to work right through the night to produce more food in less time and at less cost. Thanks to their power and versatility, never before have so few farmers been able to feed so many millions of people.
Who's that? It's amazing to think that it once took over 150 of him 2 weeks to do what this can do in a day. Enjoy your cereal.